started. Perfect. All right. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Revenue Strategy panel. I'm joined by 4 experts. My job is really easy. I just get to listen and ask some questions. And so we're really, their bios are in the program, so if you really want to find out more about them, I'll just introduce them. First name, Kate, Alex, Sarah, and Kasi. And we're going to really have a great conversation today and talking about revenue strategy. So Kate, we're going to talk about this. We're going to start.
Yeah.
Revenue strategy.
Bring it, let's do
yeah,
it.
more than 15 years we've been using this term. Yeah. And it really was to broaden our focus away from just the tactical revenue management, but more to encompass all of the aspects of the process.
Yeah.
Go from there.
Go. So, it's kind of interesting because we talk a lot about strategy and we use the word strategy. And it's been kind of a fun, even spirited conversation between all of us where we talk about revenue strategy and immediately people go to revenue management. And I'm like, wait a second. Revenue management is a discipline of the 3, right? And so there's 2 other characters in this story that gets missed as far as it goes to revenue strategy. And here's the thing, it was interesting when we talk about strategy and it's becoming more and more important, 13% of companies don't execute upon their strategies. Only 8% of our population actually has the mindset to develop strategy and execute. So when you kind of talk about, gosh darn it, why are we so tactical? What's happening is, can your teams be strategic? And the answer may or may not be no, or may or may not be yes.
But one of the things when Sheila was speaking at lunch, is it a lack of leadership? We're not talking about strategy because the leadership within the hotel or within the group doesn't make it a priority. They're just like, we just need revenue management. Is that the issue?
Yeah, I think a bit of it. I think, and here's the thing, I have a love affair of revenue management. I think all of us do, and so I don't want anybody to leave this space thinking, boy, she was really down on it. But here's the thing, revenue management really gained its traction when the markets became really large. And we started seeing really great revenue creation and revenue from just simple yielding. Now, we've gotten more sophisticated than that, right? We've got much, much, much sophisticated in that. But at the end of the day, revenue management manages established demand. Whoa, that rolled right off the road, right? But it manages established demand. What we're entering into right now is an economy where we have to create demand. And your demand creators are sales and marketing.
Right.
They create demand. Revenue management manages the established demand that's already there. So when I kind of take a look at that next level of how do we elevate, how do we innovate, we have to understand sales and marketing much, much, much more. And let's be honest, some of our sales tactics that we're doing now were the same things that I did when I was in sales selling against Jimmy Taylor.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we're going to continue building on that because I think you hit on something that's really important. And it's about integration. How do you integrate, Alex? How do you integrate the commercial teams? I know you're with the brand, but you're also working with the hotels. How do you push that down and say, no, it has to be an integrated approach?
Yeah, so for me, I joined RevRoof 3 years ago, and my title is SVP of Revenue Generation. So when I was interviewing, I asked the question, why revenue generation and not revenue management? I've done revenue management, build systems, and do all that analytical work. And I was fascinated, and I think it was the right transition for the company that we wanted to see the revenue generation process holistically. How do we work on getting more customers, how to be front and center on the brand, just the demand generation component. We also wanted to have the right pricing. We wanted to be able to set the right price. So when you think about the long journey of just making the people know that our brand exists, it starts with brand awareness and understanding that. Then you go into, do we have the right price? Do we have the right messaging? Do we have the right promotions? And that's what RevRoof was talking about. They had the right people. We didn't have all of the processes. And what really enabled us to have the whole process is data. So now we have the information that allows really the organization to know what's driving people to this site, what kind of conversion, what are we doing on SEO, SEM. On pricing, we have tools that enable revenue managers that before were spending way too much time on going into this extranet, pulling this data, We have one BI solution. You even pull star data into one place, and then they can see it all in one location. And the other transition in the revenue generation process was, how do we bring the entire organization behind this conversation? How do we get sales and marketing to understand that this is where we see opportunities here, but not over here? Being able to really elevate the understanding of how different pieces of information come together for revenue managers to make better decisions. I think that for the past 3 years, I would say, I've been coaching and mentoring the team to ask other questions about the revenue generation process. A revenue manager is not just about ADR and occupancy. It's about understanding how do you get more and more people in the store so you can convert them. And not only that, working on the other end with loyalty, being able to work with loyalty so you can bring those customers back. So it's an entire process, and I think we still have room for improvement, but the tools, the conversations, and the understanding has evolved quite a bit.
And Sarah, you want to pick up on that, because I know.
Well, so my background is, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, management company. So you said something about getting the team behind it. About 5 years ago, we have kind of coined the term RevGen. So internally, that's how we speak to what would be, I guess, the commercial services. RevGen is our revenue generation team. So there's really no, I mean, we obviously have sales, marketing, digital marketing, and revenue management, but they are one team and they kind of work like a cog. You can't move one without the other. We see revenue management as kind of the backbone or the one that's kind of leading the conversation, but it's critical that you have sales and digital there because it helps you in understanding how to deploy resources, whether you've got a hole that you need to fill out 6 months, who's going to do that on that team. We bring, so revenue management, digital marketing, and sales all sit on revenue calls, and that's the conversation. And we take about 20% of the call to look back, and then the rest is looking forward using some of the tools that we have within our organization.
Well, thinking about tools, Kasi, we spent a lot of time. You're on the technology side of this equation, and we're talking about productive revenue strategy here. What are the gaps? What's holding us back from a technological standpoint? And then how do we get past that?
Yeah, there's a lot of disparate systems in the industry. Management teams on property typically log into no less than 15 systems on any given day in a lot of cases. And, it is a quest, I think, by many teams to bring that all into one, especially if you're a third-party management company and you're working with multiple brands and you're trying to understand your whole portfolio. But until we can all evolve just a little bit and have more integration available and APIs and secure data transmission, it is right now still a lot of piecing things together and exporting it from one place, importing it into another, and trying to transpose the data. And all of that does introduce risk. Yeah. Anytime you touch data and move it around, there's risk to the information, there's risk to the accuracy, to the security, and all of those things. So I think we're getting there, and I've seen a lot of the brands keep investing in the technology and data warehouses, and I know those are buzzwords and data lakes and all of that, but that is actually really important. Those are the foundational elements, is the source data, right? And getting access to that source, because you can overlay lots of systems once you have clean data at the core.
And Kate and Sarah, because I'm going to point at you guys, you were saying about holistic strategy, revenue strategy. What seems not only is it the people side and the departments, but it really is also a technology piece that needs to be thought about holistically, which I don't think we have very well.
And I don't know what comes first. Is it the thinking or the technology enablement? So here, when we were talking about this, there's two gaps that I want to bring forward for you to consider and marinate on. One is the customer buying journey, the customer facing, right? That's one side. We'll get to the management side and the ownership side in a bit. But if we think about the customer buying journey, when it goes from unaware to aware to research to validate to purchase, most of our technology lies in the point of sale, where it becomes a price-driven sale, right? When we take a look at those systems or the thinking, I don't care which one, both sides I can argue, the amount of systems and understanding we have at that point of awareness, or what we like to call in Kate & Co, the point of inspiration, is very little, particularly within our hospitality industry. So if our whole idea is, hey, let's get away from a price-driven sale, we have to have this thinking and technology to go with it. Again, I don't know which comes first. To be able to understand that customer, which is going to get into the segmentation customer.
Right.
So, so that's one. Two is this management, is our ownership and management. So we have, over here, we have a lot of data.
You're falling apart today,
It started
Kate.
out this morning when I fell on the escalator. So over here we've got financial systems and roadmaps and where we want to go. And over here we have revenue management, point of sale, CRMs. What's missing in between is actually BI strategy, right? And how do we get from this financial vision to actually how we're executing it, which is one thing that we're really taking on with Ignite. But what we see in our work is we can find anywhere from $2 to $3 million because of these disparate systems that Cassie is talking about. And that's even before the sales and marketing teams go.
Right. Alex?
So I definitely agree with everything you were saying. So one of the challenges that we have had, I think, as an industry, my background is I did revenue management for telecom and transportation before I did hospitality for the past 18 years now. And I remember one of the first projects that I was trying to work and understand is that how do you measure demand in this industry? And actually I went to a travel agency, and the travel agency had a counter of how many people walk into the store. And think about it, this is 18 years ago. And since then I've been fascinated how much the industry pays attention to actually the past and actually what people bought, but not enough information, not enough insights on demand. Like how many people come to the website and actually not shop? How many people call and they don't book? How many walk into your hotel and they don't transact? That's demand. So I think we remain as an industry where we are looking backwards. We are looking into transactions, but not understanding enough demand. The good news is that now data is becoming more and more easier to integrate. So we look at data from Google Analytics, from web demand, and then we integrate it with other data sources, even star data, to start forming a picture of true demand so we can make price adjustments. So I think we are moving in the right direction. I think we definitely need technology to enable the data to come together in a more simplified way. And I will say the second part with our operators. I think we are in a really good spot, at least for us. We see the transition on hotel owners from individuals that bought the hotel, now passing that on to younger generations that are asking different questions. They really are interested more about demand generation, about social media, conversions and stuff like that. So I think we're gonna see the push from franchisees to hotel operators to give them better insights, and I think we just need to be prepared for it.
And I think owners and investors should be asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about, again, it comes back to technology and data. If there's one thing you would recommend doing right now, if you can only do one thing, what is that one thing you would do? And then how would you sell it to Sarah? Because she's the management company that has to buy that software.
Our segmentation has to steer away from our distribution systems. Right now, we talk about segmentation, and I get a kick out of it, bleisure and all this kind of stuff. And I even had somebody that said, well, it doesn't matter. Does it matter if we don't have our segmentation? And in an industry where we pride ourselves off of customer service, what customer segmentation gives us is understanding the customer deeply and how do we connect and how do we engage with them. And so we have to figure out a way where our segmentation isn't derived by just distribution systems that are a point of sale, but how do we capture, understand, and engage with the customers earlier and often?
Well, Cassie, how would we do that?
I mean, definitely map out the important data. I mean, we've mentioned STR, we've mentioned looking forward. I know a lot of people spend a lot of time forecasting, but really map out the data and understand which data points has meaning. I see a lot of people trying to throw everything into every report or every dashboard all the time, and instead of taking time up front to build smart reporting and manage by exceptions, we're trying to inundate people with data. So without that initial data map, what do you really need to manage your business? You're gonna overload people. They're gonna have to spend all their time and energy just trying to sort through it. So I would start there.
So again, it goes back to what we've been talking about, how we all started in the title of this program. It's a strategy. So it's a data map. That's a strategy. Where are you going? How do I get there? So it's strategy. It goes back. With Sarah, again, all this costs real money. You're
Yes, that's what I
managing,
was
it
gonna
costs
say.
real money. So where do you start? How do you do this? And how do you?
Yeah, we're a
instill?
company that owns and manages premium branded select service and extended stays. So we're heavily reliant. We're going to talk about 105 room average hotel. Not a lot of budget to add on a bunch of, outside of the brand tools that they give us and that we use. We focus our attention on optimizing those systems really well and understanding them. To your point about the demand, they're getting sophisticated. It's like probably the closest thing to rocket science that that we deal with. And so understanding how those algorithms are, forecasting the demand and helping us make pricing decisions. And so we have to be careful to go outside of those and procure other BI platforms or other, systems and software. Just they are necessary, absolutely, but it's a real challenge to help to get an owner to really understand them and buy into it.
Right.
And we have our staples, the ones that we say that's kind of non-negotiable. If we're gonna manage for you, we need this one thing that helps us manage across all of the 100 hotels. But anything more than that is challenging just because of cost.
So Alex, how do you convince an owner to invest?
So the way we've been going about it is first understanding what their needs are. I definitely agree that for so long we've been bombarding the owners with too many reports. They do an amazing job checking in guests, running operations, dealing with issues. Right. So our job is to make their lives simple. So we do listen closely. We sit down with some owners. We also have a multi-unit owner program where they have the ability to see 50 hotels at once as in one tool. And we try to understand, so what is important to you to make profit? At the end of the day, is that revenue, profit, and running a successful business? So we sit down with them and develop what they need. The other part is, I think there are two more parts. One is our operations team. We have a really good team that is visiting properties, and they also hear exactly what the struggles are, whether it's out-of-order room reports or something that they specifically need. We develop prototype delivered to the franchisees and operations. And the other part that I think is super important in being a good partner with hotel operators is automation. I think there are way too much work out there that people are spending time on doing. So we've been developing ways of automating it. And that topic is interesting in revenue management. We are very quantitative. We are very smart people, and sometimes in the beginning they didn't see the entire revenue generation process. But some of them became very curious, and they started looking into, what if I automate this with an Excel macro years ago? Now we have some better routines. But even better, I have like 2 revenue managers that are getting their masters right now in data analytics. So they have seen that automation and the use of algorithms and predictions is the future. And it's cool for me to be able to see that they're educating, and that knowledge is going to benefit us to make their lives easier. At the end of the day, it's really as simple as listen and simplify.
That's a great segue into, okay, what type of individual do we hire now for a revenue strategist role, or whatever you want to give it a call? It could be called something else.
Right, especially with ChatGPT and things that are happening now. It's not in the future, it's today. And so forth. I think at the end of the day, when we meet with owners, investors, and their teams, they just want the playbook. And kind of going back to my prior statement of only 8% of our population is good at strategy, or 8% of our population is good at strategy and execution. So we're putting a lot of ask into something. So why don't we create a low-code technology that gives them the playbook so they can be effective in that space?
Is that possible, Kasi?
I mean, absolutely, with the right effort up front, right? But I don't know that we're there yet. And I think you said it best earlier. You're like, you want to understand the algorithms. You want to understand what's happening. If you don't actually understand that, you may be missing opportunities, right? Automation is great, but, just going to counter a little bit, it's still developed by humans. Automation is still a human telling a system what to do. Human beings still support it, right? There's still some elements to it that you can't it doesn't mean no people, it just means less people, right? So,
or a different skill set.
Right, exactly, a different skill set. So yes, I do think augmenting your team with somebody that truly understands the technology and the data source and how everything is calculated and the data science, if you can do that, or if you can find a partner that can do that, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, and one thing to add just to that. So you've got this highly sophisticated system, so you obviously need to hire a candidate or somebody that can understand that side of it, but we're also asking a lot more of them, revenue team, to be more owner-facing and having to have those conversations, and are really the face of our revenue team. Right. We have to hold monthly calls with our owners, and our revenue team reports the data and the sales activities, digital marketing for that RevGen team. So there's a lot of our revenue management team came from a GM standpoint, so they've got that really, really good, but it's the new people coming in, like if we had to, God forbid, get one of our revenue managers left to replace that person is becoming more challenging.
Alex?
Yeah, I definitely agree that most of our revenue managers came up through the ranks. And something that is very fascinating to me is that there's already a lot of algorithms out there that can help automate. So I give you the perfect example of what we're working on is, what's the basic question a hotel operator typically asks a revenue manager? What should my price be? And where should I be focusing on? So the question about where should we be focusing on, you can actually use statistical methods to know where to focus on. So if I have the analytics to go and say, look at May 12 for these room types in this area because there's a risk, there are already fraud algorithms that detect what unusual patterns that we can replicate. We don't need to reinvent some things. Right. So that's what we're doing. We are replicating some of that to trigger an email that sends to operations in our hotel operators that this is an opportunity. And all that is created in-house. So far, we're a small organization, but a very smart and nimble to get things developed. I bet that many bigger organizations can really tap on what's already out there and integrate it and make it easier. And what I'm telling the revenue management team is that bring forward your ideas. One idea that came up last year was in the revenue generation process, when you think about it, quality is super important and being part of the conversation. So a revenue manager developed a new product that we just launched. It's called Ready Response. And it's the ability to monitor different social sites, engage, and see what, doing some text analytics, serve up content to the franchisee of where they need to work on. We are finding out that certain rooms need to, the air conditioning may be not working, or there may be some issue like that. So I think we need to listen to our staff, the franchisee, but there are really cool solutions already out there that we can replicate.
We were talking about it. A lot of this stuff goes back to knowing your customer. You used that phrase. And we talked a lot during our pre-panel conversation regarding retail and how different retail is versus the hospitality industry. Speak to that a little bit. How do we adopt that retail mentality where you are trying to create the demand, hitting them on social media? I saw that you were shopping with us. Would you like to buy this again? It's waiting. It's going to be sold if you don't buy it now. Basically, that's what retail does today, but we do nothing like that.
Absolutely. Well, what retail really has a jump on us with is omni-channel experience.
Yep.
And it's amazing to me when we talk about the customer journey, so many times the conversation starts at the time of booking. It's already a time of booking. It happens way before. We kind of already talked about this. And retail has really understood that customer. Target could say, hey, listen, you know what? This woman bought washcloths, they bought folic acid, they bought paint. She's due in 6 months because of the data that they're getting. That's what's happening in retail right now. In fact, that's what happened in retail 5-6 years ago. Right. And so when we're talking about data, and I love this conversation about data, but I want us to kind of shift our thinking and go, how much of that is based around the point of sale versus the point of inspiration? I want to be able to have, and it's not that far off, I want to be able to say, you know what? There is a couple in Syracuse that wants to get the heck out of Dodge, and I can connect with them to the point of sale and beyond, where they become a loyalty. And so I think there's a lot of things that we can really glean from the retail marketplace of not only omni-channel, the omni-channel experience, because they've had to deal with it and fight with it with the bricks.
Are we just a little bit in this industry lazy because of our margins? Because when we think about retail, their margins are so slim, they do have to fight for every dollar. Our margins are not as slim, as we all know. Is that potentially, or why are we holding back?
Well, I think...
Anyway, Alex.
Well, there's one portion of it, yes, I agree, and I want somebody else to talk to that. I also think that, and I love our industry so much, right? I love our industry. Yeah, we all do. We're here. But we're very much of an operational mindset. And so there are companies and industries that are really kicking our butt as it relates to revenue generation and what they're doing differently to capture the customer. And so I think one of us brought it up already about, how do we arm investors? And I'm like, get dirty with understanding sales, marketing, and revenue management beyond what we've already done, and look at what's happening outside of the industry that we can bring outside in thinking.
You stole my. You
You
sold something. That's okay. Because in our group, and you can, my team, some of my team members are here. I say, get dirty with the data.
Yeah.
You've got to get into it. You cannot just.
Get into it.
You've got to understand it. I'll let you continue on. Sorry.
So I think that we all have brands that we have an affinity for, right? Whether it's Apple, Disney, whichever brand you like. I think and those brands are successful because they focus on the customer experience from beginning to end. And I think that's where we sometimes we forget. Like, we need to be a little bit more of a customer-centric mind. So when was it? Maybe 10 years ago, when Airbnb was coming out, it was a competitor of hotels. It was not. And we were focusing too much on the lack of amenities, that it's not a hotel, not regulated, maybe too expensive, whatever. But we were not focusing on the customer experience. Exactly. And they came, and there was, different hosts that they were able to deliver a better service than what hotels were able to do. And some of it, at that point, I was doing vacation rentals, and I was watching them grow. And it was simple questions as, what's the closest supermarket? That they were getting answers that hotels typically don't give you the answer. And through that service mindset, being customer-centric, they were able to really make a difference. And even the younger generations, I think they see Airbnb as probably the first choice. So I think we have an opportunity to continue to leverage our consistency. We provide a good service, and we have the ability to be more customer-centric. And I think sales, marketing, revenue management, distribution, partnerships, I think are the other areas that we continue to evolve. But I think we start with the customer. We have a good chance to continue to maintain those high margins.
I think also it's important, especially if you're, the brands you mentioned, to understand, make sure your hotel, the folks in the field understand the loyalty programs and what the brands are doing, and because there's a little bit of a disconnect. I mean, the brands are throwing you, an email every day about what's gonna, the new promotion or this, that, and the other, but I don't know if the front desk person or the person at the hotel really understands how they're being marketed to when they show up.
Right.
So it's important that is pulled through down to the line level, so that, there is an experience happening before they come. But sometimes you don't know what it was or how they saw us, and I think for us, we're about 70% of our guests are, loyalty members, and that's a big number.
It's a big number. I'm going to pause here to see if there's any questions from the audience. Okay, none? Okay, we'll keep going.
So I want to answer the question. No, the industry is not lazy. I do want to answer that.
Yeah.
They're busy.
Yeah.
Okay, busy is complete opposite of lazy. I think everyone is extremely busy. And I think while I've been in the industry pretty much my whole adult life, 10 years, no, I'm just kidding. I started on the front desk in college and, just fell in love with the industry. And I've seen a lot of evolution and a lot of growth in the industry, but most of it has just been adding on to what's there, not necessarily change. And I think that's the biggest difference, right? There's evolution and we're doing more, but that's just it. We're doing more. We're not taking anything else off the table. We're just lobbing on. So, I think it is time to take a step back when nobody has time to do that. That's the problem. You're changing the tires on a moving car. That's the saying in technology, right? But you got to take a step back, look holistically, manage by exception if you can, give time back to the people that are focused on the guest experience. There's a lot of opportunity. It just is going to take a little bit more creative thinking instead of just doing more, doing different.
So as we think about this again, thinking from the owner perspective, what would you do differently? If you owned the hotels, each of you, what would you do differently? Now it's your box. You've got to make the money. So Sarah, you.
Well, I think that owners need to not shift away from RevPAR, but understand the gross operating profit per available room. And really, one thing that I've seen, and I'm sure you all have seen it as well, over time, especially since the pandemic, third-party intermediaries, the booking costs, pretty much any channel has gone up. Our commissions are up. It's important that you're really dialed into that and you're using GoPar more in that talk and the speak with your revenue team so that they do understand what that customer costs and understanding what your variable costs are at the hotel to rent a room, and go in and make sure that the systems that are making decisions for your hotels, One Yield, Bro, have that data and you're updating it frequently because the costs have gotten crazy. And then, we were talking about this morning, what the brands are charging you from a commission side of it. And you have to look really closely at your franchise statements. And so I think that's a big owner focus. It certainly is in our company. Because those costs are going up. So RevPAR can go up, but you really have to understand the cost.
What I'm thinking about, Sarah, right now, and I'll open this to the group, is okay, so I know there's been a lot of focus on cost, and we know some of the channels are more costly than others, but is there a way to mitigate that? Could we think, why aren't we doing more? Okay, we got them through a high-cost channel, but why not sell something else? Why not create a different experience or help them spend more money at the hotel?
Well, I think it goes back to that revenue, that kind of revenue strategy of that connection between what is our kind of what does that look like and how do we execute upon it. At the end of the day, which of your segments, not the meta segments of group and transient, your actual segments, which one have that growth opportunity and which ones are the most profitable, and then to be able to prioritize those. And say, you know what, we don't have to win at all of them, but we certainly have to win at least 5. And what Dad always used to say is major in the majors. And we've got too many people that are majoring in the minors. And so if these are your top 5 segments of growth and profitability, now how do you get sales around it? How do you get revenue management around it? How do you get marketing around it? Where revenue management isn't just owning these specific segments, and sales is doing that, and marketing is doing this awareness campaign that we really can't even tether to a certain segment. It's that prioritization.
Okay.
So I think for me, it's more. I usually tell properties in my team is, you need to have a goal of what your segmentation, your mix needs to be. Every booking that comes in comes at a cost. So you need to understand which segments or which customers, I will say, they bring you the highest profit. So for us, we know that our loyalty program, direct business, tend to deliver a higher profit for our franchisees. We know the place of OTAs and there's a place for them, but we have the opportunity to bring those guests and convert them into direct customers next time. And I will say this, the second part, like just know your segmentation, but the second part, I think this is more for brands, is know your lifetime value of your customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something that we don't focus enough. We know that this month your cost of OTA was X, but you don't know what the lifetime value of that guest is over time. So I think that will be a concept we will continue to work on, and we are working on it right now. But I think just know, if you look at your pie, where does the different slices need to come from, how big they need to be, and I think continue to execute with your sales, marketing, and revenue management team how you get into that optimal mix.
So segmentation, so it is important, because it is, I mean, it remains very important. But I think what I heard, what's different is it's almost really using it to set your goals and to create that strategy around that. I don't think we hear that very often. It's just, it's just looking at the data and not doing anything else more than that.
Well, and I think, again, there has to be a shift moving away from our distribution system just because of post-pandemic, right? We've got to think something differently. Southwest Airlines figured that out, and that they, this not investing in that technology is going to cost them something. So I think that's a big deal. And behind that is it not only how do we set those goals, but how do we understand who that customer is? If we're trying to grow that customer, we better damn well know who they are. I mean, all of us have had interaction with a product or a service where you felt like they didn't know who you were. So we have to, especially in an industry where we're so hypercritical on customer service.
Agreed. But one of the things we talked about again during our conversation was, again, we touched on it earlier, but how do you create that premium experience and charge for it? How do you do that? Again, we can't do that. This is just a select service hotel.
Yeah.
But it is possible, right, Sarah,
is.
to create an experience at a select
Oh,
service
yeah, of course, yeah. I think the challenge is this commodity conversation, whether or not, there's so many hotels out there. We were saying, sometimes you wake up in a hotel and you're like, which
Where am
brand
I?
is
Yeah.
this? Because they all kind of look the same. So yeah, I mean, you can certainly do that, and we always look for any way to upcharge or to provide the value that allows us to do so. But it's become, I think it's more challenging than it ever has been, just with the brands that we work with.
And why is it challenging? Just
because of
difficult?
What's that?
Is it just difficult to do, or?
I think there's so many brands out there, and so many, you can create the value as a management company, but it's, this customer could have been at any number of these, different, so what's the difference, that kind of thing.
I think it's difficult to do because it's a mindset shift.
Okay.
So even today, we're talking about it as our product and services. And so I always kind of work with our teams of how do we box above our weight, right? What are the things what are the things an organization is really focused on? Because I got to tell you, they've been in a hotel before. They kind of know what you got going on. So how do we actually partner with them at a higher business level to help them to create value in something that they're trying to do? Otherwise, we are just a commodity. And at the end of the day, it's more than a box.
It's more than a box, right?
I think it has a lot to do with what customers value. I think if you have an opportunity to, whether you offer an add-on, a breakfast, or whatever it is in our segment, I think if it's important to the customer, I think it makes sense to charge more and offer it. I think we also want to be cautious that not because of the pressure of delivering higher margins that you start adding more to it. Like as is, I think in our industry we have too many fees, and we hear it, all of us, of whether do they make sense, and in some cases they don't for a customer perspective. This is an interesting conversation we have pretty an ongoing basis at RevRoof. We are a pet-friendly brand, and usually the question is, why don't you charge for pets? Everybody else is doing that. But that's something that we are celebrating 50 years of RevRoof, and it has been in the core of servicing different segments, and we know that pet-friendly and owners that remain loyal to RevRoof is because it's free. Right. So why? I get the financial aspect of it. My CFO, our finance person is not here, so I'm okay.
Let it rip, yeah.
Yeah, I will say I want more money, and we want to deliver better returns for the brand. But at the same time, over here, I have a customer that over time, my lifetime value of that customer is worth more.
Yeah.
But again,
No, I definitely agree, understanding the customer. I think the one thing we haven't mentioned yet is how the airlines have segmented the customers and give that premium experience. I mean, you have the economy, then you have Delta Comfort does a great job with it, and then you have business class. Like even within the same property, I think there is opportunity to kind of think about that model and that experience. Maybe somebody doesn't want all the things, and they just are in the room for a few hours to sleep and get up and go to their meeting the next day. Maybe somebody else wants to work from the room and they want the room service and they want all the things and they need all the things, and I think there's a way to capitalize on that. And I know when the airlines first came out with the baggage fees, I mean, you know, I'm not saying that was a great strategy, but we're over it now. It took a long time. I don't think our industry is really willing to upset the apple cart to do anything that drastic, right? Like we try really hard not to upset guests. I mean, that's rule number one, don't upset the guest. So like we don't take those kinds of bold moves because of the backlash and the things that might happen. But I think there's something that could be considered, not all of the ideas that the airlines have had, but some of them.
And I think in some respects, we are charging some premiums in whether the room has a different configuration or, so in the rate we are doing that. So it was interesting for me during, right as COVID was happening, we saw an improvement in occupancy for our rooms that were in a certain location of the hotel. They had direct access from the parking lot. They didn't want to run into other guests. So we saw an opportunity to charge a premium for that at that time. Obviously, we have adjusted that. So I think I don't think you need to call out the premium per se. We already included in certain rooms. I think the sophistication of revenue management will continue to take care of that. But we should always be thinking about what the customer wants. I think we will find opportunities there.
It keeps going back to knowing the customer. I think it really just goes back to that.
Yeah.
So revenue strategy is really understanding the customer and then creating the product experience, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
So we have about, I've been checking, like 3 minutes. Are there any questions from the audience? Look over here, didn't see. Yes, sir.
So my name is Mike Jim with Ideas. I want to go back to something that you said in the middle of the conversation. You talked a lot about understanding the customer, but something piqued my interest around talking about revenue management, the usage of it, but most importantly, how you talk about it as a team. So Katie, you talked about shared goals.
Yeah.
What's the one thing each of you work on that allows for your teams to communicate in a way that each other can understand, so you can actually have those shared goals?
Great
the
question.
Influence of the demand,
Yep.
the influence of the managed by exception.
Yep.
Because what I see in the industry is everybody's just listening and yelling into their own echo chamber
Yeah.
and not willing to understand what the other person in their connected commercial organization is talking about. So what's your one thing?
I'll hit at this one. It goes back to the customer. So when we talk about collaboration of the commercial teams, and we've got sales and marketing and revenue management, and they're in a meeting, and they're calling that commercial strategy, but really they're just making nice noises around a table. Right? It's about the execution. And so when we take that back, we say, hey, listen, who are your core customers? And let's map out their customer buying journey, again, from their being unaware, all the way to the point of sale and beyond. And then instead of saying, oh, you know what, let's take that traditional look at, marketing pull, sales push, revenue management price, the push-pull price, we say, hey, listen, here's their buying journey. Here's what the customer has experienced. Shut up about your product. What are they thinking about? What are they doing? Where are they going? Now, who should go first? Should it be revenue management? Should it be sales? Should it be marketing? What's the message that doesn't include your product or service that talks about and helps them to make a decision in your favor? Because again, what we learned is if I have mind share, I get share of market and I get share of wallet. But all too often we wait until the point of sale, where it becomes a price-driven sale, and then we're trying to get market share. When if we could get there earlier, we could have gotten mind share as well.
For us, has been an education, internal education. How the revenue generation process consists of many, many interactions internally. It goes from getting enough customers from sales and marketing. It goes to delivering great experience from operations. It's interesting to me that sometimes when you're doing a function, you don't realize how you fit into the entire equation.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what we've been educating with very simple tools and really driving the whole organization behind certain concepts, whether it's RevPAR or growth, something simple. And what I will say is that the reports need to make it simple enough that from your front desk to your CFO, they all understand this is the entire revenue process, and we need help here, and connecting the pieces. I think that's what, in addition to what she said, I think it's an opportunity that we have been leveraging for the past 3 or 4 years.
And I think we make sure that we have all the right people on those calls, but that they all understand, go back to segmentation and channel distribution, which segment that they're responsible for, what they're going to come speak to. And that includes digital, it includes our sales teams and our revenue management team. Because I'll have an owner, call me up and be upset about a revenue manager in the team, talking about why negotiated or group is down or whatever, and points a finger towards the revenue person, when I have to explain to them that everybody has their own, I guess, piece of it. And so having those guys on the phone all the time together, knowing exactly where they're going to, create value and walk away with an action step, it starts to kind of just.
It's about breaking down the silos.
Yep.
And Kasi, you have the last word.
Awesome. I would just break it down into simple information. I know that's already been said, but oftentimes I see a lot of people they've got their own report, their own flavor of data, their own thing they're focused on. Everyone needs to be looking at the same information and discussing the same information so they can together draw the conclusion and decide what to do next.
Revenue strategy is a team event.
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you, panelists. Thank you for attending. And enjoy and talking about dogs, it's time to go see the puppies. Yeah, it's the puppy therapy. So great, thank you.